The 2021 reboot of Mortal Kombat, based on the super popular video game that many of us have played, including me since I was a little kid, directed by Simon McQuaid, is now on, or McQuoid. McQuoid's how you pronounce his name, my bad. It's now on HBO Max and in theaters everywhere. Wanted to give my thoughts on Mortal Kombat 2021. And as I was watching this movie, and now that it's over, I was wondering, who is this movie targeted for? Because the issue with Mortal Kombat is whenever you have a video game-based movie, and I've noticed this quite a bit, is that they tend to do a lot of inside stuff that only people who have played the game will appreciate and understand. Now, some movies can balance this out pretty well, and you can like the film without having to play the game. For example, Sonic the Hedgehog did a great job of that. Silent Hill did a great job of that. Other movies, though, you kind of have to have knowledge of the game or else you won't appreciate what they're trying to do. And with this film, I felt like I have weird feelings about this movie because I was watching it with two different eyes. And I don't mean the fact that I actually have two eyes. I'm watching it like, okay, I know where this is going. I know what's going on. The movie, in many ways, is not a film adaptation, but very similar to the Mortal Kombat Scorpion's Revenge animated film. Very similar plot to that, but not identical. But there are elements that are borrowed from that, along with elements that were borrowed from the original Mortal Kombat movie back in the 1990s, which I actually like. I think that movie gets a lot of shit when it doesn't deserve it. I don't care what the internet thinks or what YouTube thinks about that movie. I like that movie, and I watched it last year, and it still holds up. Mortal Kombat, the 90s movie, 90s film, is one of the better video game adaptations. This one, there's things that this movie did better, but there were also things where I think they may have missed the boat when it comes to the Mortal Kombat, you know, the film itself, okay? First of all, if you're a fan of the video games, you're going to appreciate this movie more than somebody who's not. Point blank. You're going to appreciate it. If you know what you're getting into, you're going to appreciate it. Yes, it's an uber violent martial arts film. There's fatalities. There's references to the video games. There's lines of dialogue. There's moves right from the games. There's just all kinds of zaniness that if you don't know about the games, and when I say the games, I mean specifically the original Mortal Kombat trilogy that was back in the 90s, and a little bit of the modern ones, but not as much. Most of the characters in this were from the original sort of three games. And there's a few that weren't, you know, it just depends. A lot of them were from the first game. But you'll appreciate it more if you are familiar with the video games than if you're not. If you're not, you're going to go into this movie, and you're going to be able to follow the plot along, don't get me wrong, but you're going to be wondering, okay, is that supposed to mean something? Like, is that just a cool line? Is that, you know, you're going to be wondering, is that from the game? Was the storyline that way? These are thoughts that are going to be going in your head. I think what they were trying to do is make a more serious, less cheesy Mortal Kombat film than the one from the 90s. That's what I think they were trying to do. A bit more of a Mortal Kombat, because it is a reboot, a bit more of a Mortal Kombat perspective from the modern glance. A couple problems here. Number one, the modern video games, Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11. That's the ones I'm talking about, from the Xbox and PS3 and then all the ones that came out after. You know, they're very violent, and in some ways very cartoonishly violent. And that's okay, because Mortal Kombat got famous because of the violence. The movie is not as violent as the video game. And that's because if they did go that violent, it would have got an NC-17 rating. Whereas this is an R-rated movie, and it's a hard R, because there's profanity, there's tons of mutilations. Just, it is Mortal Kombat, don't get me wrong. But don't expect it to be one of those things where somebody's skull cracks and they come back. Like, that's not how it is here, yo. People die, you know, as expected, which is what I want. It is, in a way, realistic, but also cartoony. Like, it is very over the top on purpose. It does kind of remind you of, you know, like an Evil Dead 2. You know, one of those kind of films, like a Sam Raimi movie. Ultimately, Mortal Kombat 2021 is I'm just going to be real with you, it's a B movie. I mean, it really feels like a B movie. It feels like a straight to Blu-ray film. But, is that a bad thing? Is it a bad movie? I was entertained. As a fan of the video games, as I was a little kid, first playing them in the arcades and seeing a huge crowd around these games, 1 and 2, and even 3, you know, if you're a fan of this franchise, you're going to appreciate what they were trying to do. But if you're not, you might be like, well, what is this? Is this just schlock crap? Like, you have to know what you're getting into. You know, it goes with a lot of movies, but with this one, you have to know what you're getting into. As far as, like, if you're looking for, like, an old school kind of martial arts film, you're not going to get that here. You're going to get some cool fight scenes. You're going to get some great martial arts action. You're going to get that, but it's not going to be on the level of even some of the stuff we saw in the Shang-Chi trailer. It's just not. Like, the choreography here was fine, but it could have been a lot better. It's almost like the fights start off with some decent choreography, and then they get to the cartoonish violence. And that's one thing I felt about this movie. Like, it was like that, you know what I mean? And there's not really any true fight scenes in this film that I think really stand out, like, to where I can say, oh, that was an incredible, amazing fight that I won't forget. There's none of that in this movie. But again, it's hard to really make a movie like that nowadays. Especially one when it's Mortal Kombat, where you have to please all these different audiences. You know, the fans of the games, the martial art movie fans. It's a difficult movie to make. Plus, you have to hammer in all of these characters, because this film introduces, you know, 7 or 8 main characters, plus, you know, good guys, plus a whole slew of bad guys. It only scrapes the surface of the Mortal Kombat story. Now, there's a couple things that the fans of the video games are not going to appreciate. I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but there are some changes made. The idea of Mortal Kombat being this big tournament is discussed, but it doesn't pay off in the way that a traditional Mortal Kombat movie would have. This is more like Annihilation when it comes to the plot, okay? Not as bad as Annihilation, I am more close to it being that bad. When it comes to like the general consensus of the plot based on this versus the video games versus the original movie really felt like an adaptation of the first Mortal Kombat game. This one is like they're taking bits and pieces from the Mortal Kombat lore, which I do love. I do love what John Tobias and Ed Boon have created throughout the years. I love Mortal Kombat lore. This movie felt more like they were taking bits and pieces from it and constructing a movie around it. But the good thing is that they do get a lot of things right. The costumes were on point. I thought that Scorpion, Sub-Zero, I thought that Liu Kang, Raiden, Kung Lao, they all looked like they're supposed to look. You know, Kano was probably my favorite character in the film. He provides a lot of the comic relief. Cabal was also very, very funny. You had a lot of the fatalities from the video games, along with some stuff that's pretty new. You know, some unique stuff. But the ones from the games, I think the throwbacks to the games is stuff that fans are going to appreciate. But I think the issue with this movie, it really is a blend of Mortal Kombat from the 90s and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, in that Mortal Kombat Annihilation tried too hard to fit too much stuff into it. And this movie doesn't go that far, but it does have aspects and moments where it does feel that way. But it also keeps things to a level for the most part. There's only like 3 or 4 different places, like locations in this film. The movie does feel very small. It doesn't feel like a big expounded upon world like the first Mortal Kombat did, where you had these like wide shots of these temples, and there's a little bit of that in this movie, but you're not seeing too much of it. The Raiden character was also a little bit inconsistent, if you ask me. I didn't think he was very well written in this movie. Now, Kano, on the other hand, was well written. Now, when it comes to the characters, you know, you've got the characters from the Mortal Kombat story. There is backstory to a lot of these characters, but not all of them. And the way there's certain things in this movie that have me scratching my head, like what happened to Jax, like the upgrades to Jax. Like, you know about the Mortal Kombat games. You know what happens to Jax between Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. But the way that they kind of did it here was a bit weird. Also, Shang Tsung is very much a mustache twirling villain, you know, which is, I don't have a problem with that, but he wasn't that interesting. He was way more interesting in the original Mortal Kombat movie. Unlike that movie, the main character of this movie is not Liu Kang. It's a character named Cole, who I don't think is in any Mortal Kombat game. I think he was created for this movie specifically because they wanted to create a character that was sort of like us, like a regular human guy. He's pretty much this like low-level MMA fighter, like a cage fighter on the independent who gets paid crap money, $200 a night or less than that, to get beaten up. And he gets thrust into this world of Sonya Blade and Kano and Sub-Zero and, Raiden and these incredibly powerful characters. And he's got to figure out what to do with his life and, what his connection is to them, which we do find out by the end of the film. But it's one of those things where he's made up for the movie because I guess they wanted to have a character we could all relate to who's not like a main character. But I just feel like Mortal Kombat fans who are super hardcore are probably going to wish that the main character was either Scorpion or, he is an important character, or Liu Kang or Kung Lao. Because Liu Kang is pretty much the main character he is the main character in the original movie. And many thought he was the main character in the original games. It just depends. He's in all the games, so you would think so. But they went a different direction. But Liu Kang is cool in this movie. I do like him in this film. Overall, I enjoyed it. I'm probably not going to watch it again anytime soon. It's a movie that, if I'm going to watch a Mortal Kombat movie, honestly, I'm going to watch the original one from the 90s. I really am, with Christopher Lambert and Robin Shaw. I'm going to watch that one before I watch this one. I'm just keeping it real with you. This one has some cool fatalities, but if I want to sit back and watch a Mortal Kombat movie that I enjoy more as a film, I honestly like the original one more. Some of y'all may not agree with that, but that's how I feel. Doesn't mean this movie sucks. It's worth watching on HBO Max, but make sure you're a fan of the franchise first so you'll appreciate the movie more. If you're not, there are better options out there. If you're going to go to a movie theater, and if you want just a movie that's just gory and fun and over-the-top violent, go see this movie. You're going to have a good time. But don't expect to be anything more than that, especially if you're not a fan of the games. That's it. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you very soon. Have a lovely day.